Today I'm going to go over how to create a color plan for a watercolor painting. If this is my reference image, what I like to do is break up each section of the piece and lay out a value scale of color for each one. So I would start in my journal with a value scale labeled sky. I have, obviously the land is full of various things, but I'm going to put greenery as one. That will count for my green foliage in there. And then I might have some smaller scales for the various colors of flowers and hints of color in there. And then I have the sand in my trail. And you know, I'm also going to add, so the sky is going to be just the blue, and then I'm going to add in a scale for clouds, because if you look really closely and if you observe the sky in general, the clouds themselves have their own color scale. Sometimes the shadows in the clouds can look purple, sometimes they can look bluish gray, and then the blue of the sky that peeks through has a variety of blues. There's a lighter blue, a medium blue, and a dark blue. So the goal with your color plans is to at least have a light, a medium, and a dark color. And sometimes it's helpful to have this image in black and white so you can see what's lighter and what's darker until you practice seeing that more or getting to understand what colors are light, what colors are dark. I'm going to work in a variety of blues for my sky, and I'm going to use a gradated wash for this because I want a gradual shift from light blue to dark blue. So I'm going to put down my clear water first, and then I'm going to bring in my richer blue. And this isn't exactly the color I want. It's a little too vibrant. So then I may have to do a little bit of mixing on my palette. That's what these little shapes are for in my lid. But I might bring a little bit of this blue in, and to tone it down, it's a little too it's almost too turquoisey. I'm going to bring in a touch of this slightly darker blue. And that feels a little bit better, just a little. I'm going to give that a try. And the color plan isn't meant to be like the exact answer. It's a testing space. So that's why I do it in my journal. That looks better. So I like this color better. I'm just going to cross out that kind of turquoisey color that I was using. And I'm going to bring in this light color here. It's my medium value. A little bit lighter. And when I want it to be really, really rich, I just use less water. And that looks too vibrant. It doesn't look natural. So perhaps it's too dark, or I can take a little bit of orange to my blue, and that mutes it. It makes it a little bit more of a grayer blue, which might be something that would be appropriate for my clouds. Now, it is important to keep track of what colors you're using so you don't forget. So I have a nice little description here of what the colors are. So I have my ultramarine mixed with orange red is giving me this kind of muted color that I want. Now, too much orange is going to give me orange, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to test it. That's a little that might be the darkest gray that I want in this mixture. So I might bring that in a little bit here. Obviously, my scales are just giving me a place to start, and then I'm kind of shifting and working as I go. Yours may look like this, yours may not. You could also do little swatches of color off to the side if you want to see what your colors look like before you decide where you want to put them. Now the greenery. I'll try this green. Try this green. Neither of them really match exactly, but I'm going to go more with this green. I'm liking this. I'm going to call it a yellow green, so I could label that and keep track of it that way. But I start with my medium and my yellow-green. Perhaps to go darker, I will start with just richer pigment, right? Less watered down. But I feel like in these darker areas, I almost need to bring in, let's see, maybe a blue. I'm trying to stay away from black. Black tends to become pretty dull in a watercolor painting. So I would try for a blue or a purple to give yourself some darker colors. So I'm just doing a little bit of mixing off to the side to see if I can find something a little richer, but adding blue or violet is going to darken your color. That's better. Still not dark enough though, in my opinion, so I'm bringing a little bit more blue. And that feels a little bit better. I think I could still go darker, which I might be able to do with layering. And so here we have a scale of light, medium, dark, even darker for some of the shadows. And the flowers, I'm going to experiment with some color mixing and try to figure out what colors to use for my yellow, my kind of burgundy purples, and some of my reds. Now here's I work on the sand. You know, I understand it. Starting with a neutral color makes a lot of sense, starting with a brown or a tan color. But we also want to remember that we want all of our colors to work together. So if I'm going to pull in this neutral color that I haven't used anywhere else, I really should try to pull in some of this gray or some of the greens or some blues into it so that these colors can all tie together. What we don't want to have happen is we have blue here, all blues here, all greens here, and some spots of red and yellow. It's going to look quite flat. So if we can pull in more colors and help those colors bounce back into different spaces, kind of like they jump back and forth in all of the places, it tends to make the painting feel a little bit more cohesive and unified. So I'm going to start with a neutral, this burnt umber brown color, but then I'm probably going to pull in a little bit of this green to it, and it just is very subtle, but it's enough that it has a kind of a greenish side to it or tint to it, which makes it make sense amongst all of the green that it's going to be sitting in. Another thing too is I'm looking, some of the green areas have this little yellowish tint to them. I can go look at my value scale that I created, and you know, I feel like it's a little too green from here to here. I feel like in this area where we have some medium values, I might be able to pull in a little bit of a yellow. The beautiful thing about watercolor is you can overlap them. They're transparent, so I can come in and maybe bring a little bit of a yellow wash over that, and that's going to bring a little bit more liveliness to it. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different values in there. It's not just the 3. So keeping track of what colors you used to create this is super helpful, because many times if we don't write it down, you come back to it the next day to actually start painting and you don't even remember what you used. Then you have to remix and guess on how you got all of these things to begin with, and that can become quite frustrating. So a finished color plan would look something like this. Section out your image into the the main different sections, the background, the middle ground, the foreground. Label everything, do some color scales, play with your paints, mix some things up, do some swatches, and then record it all like a recipe so that you can come back to these time and time again while you're working on your painting, and you have the recipes right there and you stay consistent with your colors in your painting.